Welcome to Future Talk. On today's program, we're going to talk about some of the latest developments in how human beings interact with computers. Andy Hertzfeld was one of the key designers of the original Macintosh computer and played a major role in developing its graphical user interface. Since leaving Apple, he co-founded several other companies, including General Magic, and he currently works for Google, and is the author of Revolution in the Valley, a book about the early days of the Macintosh, and he's also the creator of folklore.org, a website devoted to collective historical storytelling. Isaac Majorovich is originally from Colombia, South America, and has electrical engineering degrees from both Caltech and the University of the Andes in Bogota, where he also served as dean of the electrical engineering department. He's been at Cisco Systems since 1995 and is currently a product manager at the Cisco Networking Academy. He's going to talk about the fast-growing field of telepresencing. Also with us is visual journalist Eileen Clegg. Eileen is the founder of a company called Visual Insight, and she works for companies large and small, drawing murals in real time that capture the essence of innovative ideas. She'll be drawing her interpretation of our conversation today, and at the end of the show, we'll look at it and see what it can tell us. And you were involved in the very earliest stages of the Macintosh. You were one of the key designers of it. What can you tell us about the culture at Apple or the vision of Apple that made it possible to produce something that was so far outside the box at that time?
Well, I think it started with the values and personalities of the founders, especially Steve Wozniak, but also Steve Jobs. The Apple II was not, which was really the first big product for Apple, was not thought of or conceived of as a product. It was a labor of love. It was Woz's lifetime dream, and he approached it more like an artist, really, than an engineer. And so Apple was gifted with this work of genius. Woz is an amazing genius, using original techniques that no one had ever thought of before to deliver an incredible experience for the time at a price affordable to individuals. So the Apple II and other computers at the time were the first computers, were so exciting because they were the first computers that an ordinary person could have. But they were still a little too hard to use. They weren't powerful enough to create a great user experience. So the Macintosh was sort of the reincarnation of the Apple II for the 80s, where we were able to use the advances in the underlying technology for the very first time to make a computer that's both affordable and enjoyable to use.
Now, is this a culture that was consciously created, or did it take just several extraordinary individuals to do it? What I'm asking is it possible to intentionally create this kind of culture, or does it just have to happen kind of accidentally?
Well, I would say extraordinary individuals, again, starting with Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs, two of the most extraordinary individuals I've ever met, working mainly out of their passion. I would say the single secret to doing what Apple did is the people working on the products were working on something they wanted for themselves more than anything else in the world. So they filled it with love and passion, and you don't have to do market research when what you're creating is the thing you want the most.
Now, we have some slides of some of the early days at Apple, so let's go ahead and show the first one of those slides.
That's a photo taken by...
That's your book.
Yeah, that's the cover of my book, actually, based on a photo taken by a fellow named Norman Seeff around the time of the Macintosh introduction. That was taken in December 1983, and those are some of the key designers of the Macintosh.
That's you in the middle, standing up.
Me in the middle, Burl Smith and Bill Atkinson on both sides of me, Burl holding the keyboard, Bill holding the Mac. Joanna Hoffman, and another amazing person who was the first marketing person for the Mac. At the very left is George Crow, who designed the analog electronics. On the far right is Jerry Manick, who designed the case for the Apple II and led the team that did the industrial design for the Macintosh.
Okay, let's take a look at the next slide now.
That's the Mac software team.
So you guys had some fun, too. You weren't just programming all the time.
Demonstrating teamwork and how we built on top of each other's work. That pyramid, though, only lasted for a few seconds.
Building on each other, that's sort of a good way of looking. There's you in the red shirt.
Yes.
Okay, let's look at the next slide.
That's a collage, actually, that was done for the 10th anniversary of the Macintosh, with pictures of some of the key creators. Myself, Bill Atkinson, Burl Smith, Susan Kerr, who was the artist who designed the icons and fonts for the Macintosh. At the lower left there is Steve Jobs, a man who needs no introduction.
And the person on the television screen was?
That was Jeff Raskin, the brilliant man who conceived of the original Macintosh.
Okay, and here it looks like a coming out party
And that
of some
was
kind.
on the doorstep of the building we all worked in right before the Macintosh came out. This was the team of 100 people who built the original Macintosh.
And we have one more slide.
Finally, yeah, that one was taken at my 40th birthday party in 1993. I'm at the very left, Bill Atkinson in the blue shirt, Bud Tribble, who was really the very first Macintosh programmer, and Steve Jobs on the right.
You still keep in touch with those guys?
Yeah, I'm still really close to all the core key creators of the Macintosh are like my extended family.
Now, after you left Apple, you worked at a number of other companies. In fact, you co-founded several companies. Did you do any work in those companies that contributed to the overall theme of human-computer interaction?
You bet. At General Magic, we pioneered a product category called Personal Intelligent Communicators. That was probably a good 10 to 15 years ahead of its time. You could consider what we built, these Magic devices, as the iPhone of the mid-90s. Very similar type of aspiration because they were fundamentally communicators. You use them to, they were highly graphical, and you'd send little electronic postcards back and forth with them. This is in an era before email was widely used.
So the idea is that people prefer pictures to text. It's easier to relate to a picture than to read a bunch of text.
Sure, depending on what it's for. Text certainly has its place, but graphics can be much more intuitive.
Now, I understand you're working at Google now. What can you tell us about your work without giving away too many company secrets?
Well, I can talk about a product I developed for them last year called Google News Timeline, which I tried to create something that was sort of like Google Maps is for the dimension of space. I tried to create something similar for the dimension of time, where you can explore time in a Zoom-based user interface. And
you mean like history
aggregate
going
information.
back?
Yeah, back to I have the most important events in the history of mankind going back to the 11th century in there, but you can go to any particular period of time and see periodicals like Time Magazine or Popular Science, as well as all kinds of other information.
So it sounds like you can take events that are far apart in time and space and bring them together, connect them in a way that you could not do easily otherwise. And I think one of the most important things about computers is the ability for pattern recognition.
Sure.
Which enables you to see connections you couldn't see otherwise.
Yeah, well, I was trying to put things in perspective and really create a map of the culture, the zeitgeist. And it's amazing how the magazine covers, like the Time magazine covers, when lined up in a temporal sequence, can really show how the zeitgeist evolves.